change, being muted, he was muted for luring other players into the wilderness to film his videos. 2 days later, on February 6th, the Fremenic Isles quest was released, placing the island's Nadisnot and Yatizo into the game, as well as giving players a new best-in-slot helmet, being the Nadisot helmet. On Valentine's Day on February 14th, RuneScape released dedicated German servers. On March 20th, all chickens, cows, and rabbits had their graphical appearances upgraded. On April 18th, the Wilderness Ditch was released in attempts to stop players from luring each other. On May 1st, Jagex posted an update on the main page titled Bots and Real-World Trading. They began mentioning bots and real-world trading quite heavily during this time, listing off statistics for players to read about how many accounts they were actually banning each week. At one point in time, it was made clear that they were banning 8,000 accounts weekly for breaking these rules. On May 4th, RuneScape achieved a Guinness World Record for having reached 1 million membership subscriptions. On May 8th, small spiders, calphites, scorpions, and the metal dragons also received graphical upgrades. With graphical upgrades becoming the new norm, it was only fitting that eventually it carried over into RuneScape cities. On May 29, 2007, Varrock and all of its NPCs changed forever and received a massive graphical upgrade. This would be RuneScape's biggest makeover yet for any city for the first time. Because of this change, 4 days later on June 2nd, more riots occurred in World 64, 65, and 66, and it caused RuneScape's very first entire server blackout. On a lighter note, on June 13th of this month, Zezma became the first player ever to reach 1 billion total XP overall. On June 26th, RuneScape's game engine was updated and an entirely new game frame was implemented, being the main game frame that we all know today in old school RuneScape. On July 24th, Party Pete's room was officially moved to a more populated city, being Falador. Next month, on August 6th, Clan Chat was released. Before Clan Chat, players' only way to communicate with each other was through private messaging, so this was actually seen as a pretty great update. 4 days later, on August 10th, Jagex saved a copy of this 2007 version of RuneScape and deleted any older version of the game forever. This is why Old School RuneScape's revision is the revision that it is. Old School RuneScape's revision, at the beginning, was a revision of August 10th, 2007. August 28th, the God Wars dungeon was released, bringing loads of new armor and weapons into the game. On the 18th of September, the ZMI altar was released. This boosted Runecrafting's original max XP per hour rate from 25k to 50k. On October 2nd, another city received a major graphical upgrade, being Edgeville. On October 23rd, 2007, after being with Jagex for 5 years and implementing many great updates, Constant Tedder unfortunately resigned from being CEO at Jagex, and he was replaced by a man named Jeff Idison. On November 5th, the Assist system was released. This system allowed other players to give XP bonuses to their friends while they were training. On November 11th, the skills interface was upgraded again, and it went from this to this. On November 26th, the Grand Exchange was released northwest of Varrock West Bank. This was a massive change to the way trading was done in RuneScape. Player interaction was no longer needed, and merchanting clans became very popular very fast. A lot of players
did all
liked the
that
GE,
shit.
and a lot of players hated the GE. The update
Yeah,
was
I used
extremely
to sell
controversial.
lobsters and swordfish all the time.
From there, for both players and for Jagex, real-world trading and bots had only gotten worse. Sometimes it seemed as if bots had taken over entire cities. Bots, at this point in time, made up about 30% of RuneScape's player base. On the end of the illegal activities, gold farmers began stealing players' credit card numbers. They would then use these stolen credit card numbers to make RuneScape member accounts to farm gold on. Players quickly began realizing that their cards were being stolen and used. Banks began returning thousands of real-world dollars to players that had their private information stolen in this way, and it caused some serious problems for Jagex with real-life banks. The banks began thinking that Jagex was behind all this stolen money that was being refunded to people, and Jagex as a company almost wasn't allowed to be able to accept credit card payments anymore because of this. Paul Gower stated that if that had happened, they would have really been screwed as a business, because if there's no Jagex, there would be no RuneScape. In RuneScape's 15th year anniversary documentary, Andrew recounted these times, stating in his own words, "It got to the point where we were like, there's only two ways that we could possibly tackle this. We could either A, start selling the items ourselves, because that would basically dry up the gold farmers' markets and they would have no financial incentive to keep breaking our countermeasures, or we could do something really radical, which could completely break
Take away
which is
trade.
restricting trades." So, on the 12th of December 2007, Jagex had announced that they were going to make a decision that they didn't take lightly at all, and that they were going to begin adding a trade limit at the beginning of next year. On the same day of this announcement, the Wilderness received a massive update. The Wilderness Volcano, Bounty Hunter, and Clan Wars were put into the game. update the Duel Arena for the first time ever.
That's
was
old
changed to
Clan
free
Wars
play.
on the right.
Ending this year on a lighter note, though, the
It's like
player
a
who
soccer
originally
field.
achieved level 99 Earth Lore before anybody else back in 2003 finally achieved 200 mil XP overall in the skill before anyone else as well. The player was Half Noon, so it essentially took him 5 years to achieve this.
That's why the game's whack. This is like the end of the game.
On January 2nd of this year, trading and staking would never be the same again. They were now capped limited by the amount of quest points you had on your account. If you hadn't completed any of the quests, you could only trade and stake within a limit of 3,000 coins. If you had completed all the quests, your limit you could work within then was 25,000 coins. Merchanting was significantly harder, and gift giving became a thing of the past. It was also during this year of the month that, because of these controversial updates and the massive amount of hate that came with them, Jagex had to completely remove the rant section on the RuneScape forums. Shortly after this, they also removed the compliments section as well, because all the hate just spilled over into that forum too. On January 15th, the summoning skill was released, and along with it, another new version of RuneScape's game frame and stat menu. For the first time in RuneScape's history, the stat menu had received a scroll bar. Summoning would also, unfortunately, mark the day that the Zezima era came to an end in RuneScape. On Zezima's original YouTube channel, Zezima0213, he had posted a message that stated, "I have stopped playing RuneScape competitively because it's getting progressively easier over time. With it getting easier to train skills and gain XP, I've lost a sense of accomplishment and what I've worked hard to achieve since I started in 2001. If things will continue to get easier, it will
Zezima's
lose the
a
game for those of
bitch.
us who have been here since the beginning." 11